letters to dictators. She will defend democracy and our Constitution and will protect America from enemies, foreign and domestic. Think about it. The Constitution says the president's job is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Those are the words of our founders. Take care. Just look at the candidates. Kamala cares about kids and families, cares about America. Donald only cares about himself. On her first day in court, Kamala said 5 words that still guide her. Kamala Harris, for the people. That is something that Donald Trump will never understand. So it is no surprise, is it, that he is lying about Kamala's record. He's mocking her name and her laugh. Sounds familiar. But we have him on the run now. So, no matter what the polls say, we can't let up. We can't get driven down crazy conspiracy rabbit holes. We have to fight for the truth. We have to fight for Kamala as she will fight for us. Because you know what? It still takes a village to raise a family, heal a country, and win a campaign. And America needs every one of us, our energy, our talents, our dreams. We're not just electing a president, we're uplifting our nation. We're opening the promise of America wide enough for everyone. Together, we've put a lot of cracks in the highest, hardest glass ceiling. And tonight, so close to breaking through once and for all, I want to tell you what I see through all those cracks and why it matters for each and every one of us. What do I see? I see freedom. I see the freedom to make our own decisions about our health, our lives, our loves, our families. The freedom to work with dignity and prosper, to worship as we choose or not, to speak our minds freely and honestly. I see freedom from fear and intimidation, from violence and injustice, from chaos and corruption. I see the freedom to look our children in the eye and say, in America, you can go as far as your hard work and talent will take you, and mean it. And you know what? On the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States. Because, my friends, when a barrier falls for one of us, it falls. It falls and clears the way for all of us. So for the next 78 days, we need to work harder than we ever have. We need to beat back the dangers that Trump and his allies pose to the rule of law and our way of life. Don't get distracted or complacent. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Volunteer. Be proud champions for the truth and for the country that we all love. I want my grandchildren and their grandchildren to know I was here at this moment, that we were here, and that we were with Kamala Harris every step of the way. This is our time, America. This is when we stand up. This is when we break through. The future is here. It's in our grasp. Let's go win it.
Good evening, I'm Errol Lewis. You are watching Spectrum News coverage of the Democratic National Convention. That's Hillary Clinton, who just addressed the convention, getting great applause. It is 10:08 on the East Coast, 7:08 on the West Coast, and 9 p.m., 9:08 specifically in Chicago, and that's where the United Center is rocking. The convention is underway, and tonight's theme is For the People. It's also a night to honor President Joe Biden's legacy. He'll be addressing the convention a little bit later, and we'll bring that to you in its entirety. We'll also be hearing from the First Lady, Jill Biden, before the president speaks. Joe Biden will be introduced by their daughter, Ashley Biden. Vice President Kamala Harris arrived at the United Center about an hour ago, and shortly after a video, which featured Beyonce's song Freedom, she popped out on stage unexpectedly and thanked President Biden.
I want to kick us off by celebrating our incredible President Joe Biden, who will be speaking later tonight. Joe, thank you for your historic leadership, for your lifetime of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you.
Okay, so she made some very brief remarks. You almost heard all of it right there. But there were some other speakers as well. And the first woman ever nominated for president by a major party was Hillary Clinton. She spoke a short time ago. Let's bring in political anchor Susan Arbetter, who has covered Hillary Clinton for years. You got to know her when she was a U.S. Senator representing New York. What did you make of the speech?
I thought it was a speech that was long in coming, Errol. I mean, this is a woman who I think we can say is the Democrats' favorite aunt. I don't want to say grandmother, so we'll say favorite aunt. She's somebody who broke barriers on her own and is beloved by the crowd that she's speaking to. I took some notes of the speech. The applause that she received was just remarkable, an incredible extended applause. She mentioned the energy in the room several times. She said that something is happening in America. You can feel it. She shouted out Joe Biden, saying that he brought back decency to the White House. And she did something that Hillary Clinton is known for, which is making sure that she thanks the people who came before her. And she specifically shouted out the great Shirley Chisholm and, of course, Geraldine Ferraro, who were also women who ran for president before her. We remember Hillary Clinton, but these are women that came back in the 80s and the 70s before her. And she paid tribute to the moms out there who always said, keep going. Kamala Harris is likely to talk about her mom later in the week. Hillary Clinton talked about her mom. We had several women talking. This is almost like a mom convention in the DNC right now. And it's a stark contrast between what we saw at the RNC and what we're seeing today. You know, she said that Trump and Harris, making that comparison, Harris rather won't send love letters to dictators. She'll protect Harris from enemies, foreign and domestic. Kamala cares. Donald only cares about himself. And in the ultimate irony, Errol, the crowd at the DNC, at the center, started shouting, "Lock him up," which is what the Republicans said about Hillary 8 years ago in 2016. So
yeah,
this was quite a comeback for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, she did. I noticed she did not quiet them down. She, I think, just kind of took that in since they were chanting that about her in Cleveland in 2016. And Susan, to a certain extent, it's not just that she was the party's nominee. This is the party faithful. These are the people who go out and knock on doors and volunteer time and work the phone banks and all of that. And a lot of them were doing all of that for Hillary Clinton in 2016.
Yeah, it was devastating. Devastating for Hillary Clinton herself. It was devastating for the people around her. I think that this, in many respects, is, I mean, it's bittersweet. You mentioned that this was bittersweet. I think it's a lot sweeter than it is bitter, since a woman who Hillary Clinton clearly has an affinity for is going to be at the top of the ticket, accepting the nomination later this week. I think that this tonight is a night that Hillary Clinton won't forget.
Very much for that, Susan. Let's go to Spectrum News anchor-in-chief national political reporter Josh Robin and national political reporter Taylor Popolars. They're both inside the United Center. And Taylor, what are we expecting to hear from President Biden tonight?
Well, you know, Errol, in so many ways, this is Biden's political farewell. He's obviously going to remain in office through the end of the year. If he gets what he wants, then Kamala Harris will succeed him and be sworn in next January, but we'll have to see what happens in November. But for the president, you know, he came out on the stage earlier tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, to do a brief mic check and a quick walkthrough, and he answered a few reporters' questions, and one of them said, "Are you ready to pass the torch?" And he simply said, "I am." So I think this will, in many ways, you know, he had that Oval Office address a couple of weeks ago to announce his decision. He appeared last week at an event in Maryland, right outside the D.C. area, with Harris to kind of talk about some policy ends of things. I think this will be, you know, his venue to talk about a political career that started way back in 1970 and has spanned half a century, that elevated him from being a council member in Delaware all the way up to being the vice president and then president these last 3.5 years. So we're still awaiting the official excerpts, but you have to realize that, you know, after this event, Biden is flying to California overnight to go on vacation for the rest of this week. So there's literally a symbol right there in that he is handing this party off to his deputy and saying, "I'll be kind of running the show behind the scenes for the next 4 or 5 months, but you're now the leader." So I think it'll be really telling to hear what he has to say, but also First Lady Jill Biden, who is his closest advisor and confidant, who has been alongside him every step of the way. And up until that moment 4 weeks ago that Biden decided to drop out of this race, all indications that we had from our reporting is that Jill Biden wanted him to stay in and was confident in his abilities to keep serving. So this will also be a significant farewell for her.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Taylor. And Josh, the Democratic Party's platform was something that they voted on. I think it was done by acclamation earlier tonight. But it has not really been updated since last month when Biden was still at the top of the ticket, right? I mean, are they planning to make any changes as far as you know?
No, it was adopted as is. It's funny, Errol, because they obviously changed the signs. There's a lot of Harris signs. Some of the swag here still has Biden at the top, but mostly, overwhelmingly, it's Harris. I just noticed a couple of them. But that platform, as you said, you know, this is long. I have it down as nearly 100 pages, 92 pages. So it took a while, but Harris's name is mentioned only a fraction of the time as Biden. Now, this platform is really where the party aims to go, what it stands for. It's not set in stone. Obviously, any platform is meaningless if it can't get passed in Congress, where it's not just Democrats. But it's a statement of what the party's values are. And at this point, if you take the platform, it's Kamala Harris agrees with what Joe Biden has said. What she has said that is differing from Biden in a couple of things is she's talked more, I would say, about how prices are still too high. She has more of a different economic plan, very slightly, with price controls, going after price gouging. That's something that Biden really hasn't stressed. And I think that she's talked at least more rhetorically about the damage that the Israeli army has caused in the Gaza Strip, but we haven't seen any substantial differences in their policy there. So, yeah, the platform is adopted, and after it was adopted, chants of USA rang out. And we've heard that actually a few times tonight. It's something that we heard often during the Republican convention. It shows you that the Democrats feel that the Republicans don't have a monopoly on this country and on touting it.
Yeah, and Josh, you were at both conventions. It goes without saying, you and I have been to a number of these conventions together, but the diversity here at the DNC is far different than what you saw at the Republican convention, right?
I took a walk this afternoon to kind of get the lay of the land here, Errol, and I thought exactly that. Look, I'll just say it as I see it. The Republican convention was what I saw was overwhelmingly white. It was certainly older than here. And Errol, it seems like we're going to go to one of the speakers there, so I'll toss it back to you.
Okay, thank you for that. This is Jamie Raskin. He's a congressman from Maryland. Let's listen to what he has to say to the convention.
Hello, America, and welcome to the Democracy Convention. Welcome to the Freedom Convention. And thank you for the beautiful weather, Chicago. It's been a little rough on Capitol Hill, where it's not just the heat, it's the stupidity. Now, we meet in this great city tonight where Abraham Lincoln was nominated in 1860 to save the Union from fanatical insurrectionists, and where Franklin D. Roosevelt was renominated by Democrats in 1940 to defeat fascist dictators. Now, we fight in our time to defend our freedom and our democracy against the banana Republicans who have converted Lincoln's party into a dangerous cult of personality. You know, I'll never forget the pounding on the doors of the House chamber on January 6th, or the screams to follow. Hundreds of our police officers taunted and attacked, 140 of them wounded by extremists wielding baseball bats, steel pipes, even American flags. 5 people died that day, and 4 more of our officers took their own lives in the days and weeks to come. All of this after Trump was defeated by more than 7 million votes by the great Joe Biden. It was after 80 judges rejected every ridiculous claim raised by this sore loser who does not know how to take no for an answer from American voters, American courts, or American women. Remember what the mob chanted as they stormed the Capitol and injured our officers? Hang Mike Pence. Someone should have told Donald Trump that the president's job under Article 2 of the Constitution Someone should have told Donald Trump that the president's job under Article 2 of the Constitution is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, not that the vice president is executed. has now joined more than 24 officials from Donald Trump's own administration in denouncing him, an historical record. And Pence is the first vice president in more than 2 centuries not to support the president he served with in a general election. And by the way, J.D. Vance, do you understand why there was a sudden job opening for running mate on the GOP ticket? They tried to kill your predecessor. They tried to kill him because he would not follow Trump's plan to destroy and nullify the votes of millions of Americans. Your votes, Pennsylvania. Your votes, Michigan. Your votes, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona. Are we going to go back to the days of election suppression and violent insurrection?
Okay, Jamie Raskin, riling up the crowd, making the case against Donald Trump, reminding the Democratic convention of what happened on January 6th. Down on the floor, we've got our Kevin Fry, who is circulating, talking to delegates and others from various different delegations. Where are you now, Kevin?
Yeah, it's like traveling the U.S. map every few steps here, albeit it is very tight quarters, as I think I mentioned the last time. Now, we have ventured over to the great state of Arizona now, which, of course, is one of those Sunbelt states that we are paying attention to heading into November. I'm joined by Carl Gentles, who's one of the delegates from the state. You've been working in Maricopa County for some time. What do you think is the state of play right now in Arizona?
Well, the state of play in Arizona is that we're going to win Arizona for the Harris campaign, the Biden and Harris campaign, and we are absolutely ready to win. We are going to elect the first president of the United States that we can call a woman, and we are just couldn't be more excited.
What in general do you think, having Kamala atop the ticket, how has that changed things back home?
Yeah, it's just exciting, right? It's a whole new place, a whole new energy. You hear the energy, you see the energy here. Kamala Harris has just brought another level of excitement and engagement for people around this country. I think people have a lot of belief in what she can bring. She has a lot of belief in what she did with the Biden administration, and she's just going to carry that forward.
You've heard from a lot of key players tonight, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the governor of various states. You've also, of course, heard from Hillary Clinton. What have you made of what you've heard so far?
Well, what I heard was a winning team, and it's going all across the board from every single person you heard, and everybody is so excited about the Harris campaign and election. And so what you're hearing here is people that are ready to fight, we're ready to win, and we're ready to win in November.
Joe Biden won your state 4 years ago. He is now going to say thank you and pass the torch this evening. What do you want to hear from the president?
Well, first of all, we just absolutely love Joe Biden and what he's done for this country. And we're here to say thank you to Joe Biden for what he's done. And so we're going to listen to him and hear about his support for Kamala and what he believes Kamala can do for this nation. And that's why we're here. We're here to elect Kamala Harris as the next president. We couldn't be more excited. The campaign and the country runs through Arizona and Maricopa County, and we couldn't be more proud to make sure that we elect Kamala Harris as next president.
There was talk that your senator might be the VP pick. Obviously, it went with Tim Walz. Are you okay with that pick?
Look, we love Tim Walz and we love Mark Kelly. We would have loved to have him. But look, we know what everybody else now knows in this country, what a great American that Mark Kelly is. And we're more excited to see Governor Walz as the next Vice President of the United States. So we love Mark Kelly. We see him every day, and we're just happy that he was a part of the conversation.
Carl, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank
I know
you.
it's very noisy and hard to hear in here. So, yeah, this is one of those states, I think, as I mentioned at the top, that seemingly is now back more so on the playing field right now for Democrats, with Kamala Harris atop the ticket as they look to the Sunbelt states, in addition to the traditional blue wall of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Now they're also unlocking these other states like Arizona, potentially, as well as Georgia, and maybe even North Carolina for Democrats that are looking to make additional inroads here.
All right, thanks very much for that, Kevin. We'll let you get on to your next delegation. Let's head out west to California, where Alex Cohen has been watching the proceedings. And Alex, we have done a lot of research. We've crunched a lot of numbers. We've done a lot of reporting on where women voters are likely to go. It's an extremely important question. Hillary Clinton showing up on the stage was kind of a reminder that the breakthrough is not just at the top, but the voting patterns that women, the choices that women are making are really what drives a lot of our elections.
That's absolutely true, Errol. And of course, there are plenty of women who thoroughly support former President Donald Trump for all sorts of reasons. And yet, I think if there is kind of an overarching theme for tonight, it's not just Kamala Harris for the people, but for the women. And I think, 2016 was 8 years ago, and that seems like a very long time ago for many of us. And yet, I think for those there in the crowd tonight, hearing Hillary Clinton speak was a really stark reminder of everything that happened, their hopes and aspirations for the first woman president, and what happened to those hopes and aspirations. I think it's really interesting to note tonight, however, that it's not just about women, but very specifically women of color. I think of all the women that we've heard so far speaking tonight: LA Mayor Karen Bass, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, U.S. Senator LaFonza Butler, AOC, who we talked about earlier this evening. It is a very long list. Letitia James, who we heard there. I spoke actually recently with Senator LaFonza Butler, who said, there is a long history here of Black women as advocates, as activists, really paving the way for this moment. And for them to not only have a first woman president, but a woman of color, a Southeast Asian woman, and a Black woman is really a tremendous moment. You can feel the excitement there in the room tonight for so many women who've worked so long to see an occasion such as this.
Yeah, and Alex, in fact, on stage right now is Jasmine Crockett, African-American representative from the Houston area in Texas. She's going to be followed by Grace Meng, the first Asian-American woman ever elected to Congress in New York. That's more of that theme of what you're discussing about candidates of color and the leadership sort of showing a changing face of the Democratic Party. The question is always, when does 2030 get here? First they said it would be 2050, and then 2040, and then 2030, where the level of diversity would be sort of a turning point in the country. And it seems to be a goal that gets discussed a lot, but doesn't necessarily play out when it comes to policy or, frankly, even electoral outcomes.
Well, let's think, Errol, what else besides the DNC has been going on recently in Chicago? There in the Windy City, we saw the convention of the National Association of Black Journalists, and that was when we saw former President Donald Trump making those remarks that he didn't know that Kamala Harris was black, that she apparently turned black, which to many people in this country, certainly plenty of them here in California, who identify as more than one ethnicity or more than one race, this was really seen as a denial of their existence. And I think in many ways, the dynamics of this race this year, the fact that we thought it was going to be two older white gentlemen, and then this record scratch moment where all of a sudden it was a very different candidate on the Democratic side who represents a very different part of this country. Remarks like the ones that Donald Trump has made. We don't know exactly what Jasmine Crockett is saying in this moment, but we might recall some of the really testy exchanges that she has had on Capitol Hill. I think in many ways, 2024 has really ripped the Band-Aid off and confronted Americans with the fact that we've got different ideas, different beliefs, but there's no way around having a very frank conversation about them in this moment, in this election.
All right. Thanks very much, Alex. Let's head outside. We know at least 3 protesters were arrested earlier this evening. There were some reports that there were as many as 6. Outside the United Center is our Cassie Semyon. What can you tell us about the protests and any arrests and any further activity out there?
Yeah, Errol, there were a breach of security by at least 6 of those individuals that were arrested, according to police here in Chicago. What happened, though, was this was on the exterior perimeter, not the interior. So there are multiple levels of security here at the convention center. This was blocks away. There was never any real danger to anyone at the convention center. So things have calmed down since then. Police have cleared the scene, and they're really urging anyone who is active in protest over the next several days to keep things calm and peaceful. We went to a security briefing this morning by both state and local and federal law enforcement, and they said, listen, we are here to protect you just as much as we are to protect those attending the DNC. Let's try to keep things peaceful, and we can all go home at the end of this week feeling successful that we've achieved what we wanted to do. Our goal of keeping you safe, your goal of, getting your voice heard when it comes to the First Amendment, the DNC going off without a hitch. So right now, Chicago police is trying to keep things very calm and neutral in terms of dealing with protesters. As you mentioned, 3 to 6 protesters. We're hearing that number varying from different outlets. I'm hearing 6, but a small number when you think about the fact that there were big protests planned and expected over the last several weeks by law enforcement and the DNC. So really a successful first day here in Chicago for all involved.
Okay, so now let's switch to a little bit of analysis. And I know you've done some reporting on this, Cassie. There really does seem to be some tension between the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, from San Francisco, and President Biden. She was one of the most powerful of the legislators who was urging the president to step aside, and there's been some reporting that they haven't spoken since that time.
Yeah, there's a real tension, it seems, but perhaps not from Pelosi world, more so from Biden world. And the reason why I say that is because, when I spoke with the former speaker not long after the president dropped out of the race and passed the baton to Kamala Harris, she said, my conversations with the president are private. Not even my staff knows what was said in that room between us. I don't want to burden people with those types of conversations, and so I keep them private. And a lot of this speculation in the press about what I did or didn't say just simply isn't true because they don't have the sources to back it up. Well, now, a few weeks later, it seems like the Biden camp is really still frustrated with her, at least publicly. Anita Dunn, who is a very close ally of the president, has made some commentary that she's pretty upset with Nancy Pelosi and her involvement, or what she sees as Pelosi's involvement, to remove Biden, to get him out of the way, and to elevate Kamala Harris or perhaps another candidate before Harris was the nominee. And when Pelosi was asked about that today, she really brushed it off and said, well, that's their problem. I still respect and love the president. My relationship with him is my relationship. If other people are mad about what they perceive I did or didn't do, that's their problem. But she has also embraced Harris with open arms and is doing everything, she says, to make sure that she can elect Harris to be president and help down ballot ticket. When we're talking about the majority in the House, it likely runs through California. So today at the California breakfast, she was talking to delegates about the need to make sure they were supporting down ballot House races. That's where her focus is. She said she is in it to win it, and sometimes you need to take a punch for the children. That's her tagline. Obviously saying, she'll be the punching bag. People can be mad at her for what she may have done to help move along this decision that maybe Biden's candidacy wasn't viable, but she'll do it if it means that they can win this election in November from the top of the ticket down and defeat Donald Trump, who, of course, her and Donald Trump have a very frosty relationship, if you could call it that, Errol.
Right. Thanks very much, Cassie. Let's go to Tim Boyum as we wait for the president's family, Dr. Jill Biden, and then Ashley Biden, to be followed by the president of the United States. In setting all of this up, and we don't have a magic wall, we're not going to go through all of the numbers and so forth, but there is a lot of evidence that, Tim, the swing states that are so crucial to the outcome of this entire election are trending in the direction of Kamala Harris, at least right now.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that. We just saw another one in the New York Times, Siena, in some of those crucial states, Pennsylvania and Michigan, where it is shifting in that direction. And North Carolina is just sort of right on the outside of that. That's where I am in North Carolina right now. But there's an intense amount of heat and pressure and energy that is boiling in North Carolina right now, where they believe that they can push forward with this too. And I talked to Michael Whatley, the RNC chairman, today. And he has said point blank that for North Carolina in particular, that the path to the White House for Donald Trump, it runs right through North Carolina. He cannot win it if he doesn't win North Carolina. And so if Democrats can put some energy here, and force Donald Trump, he was here last week. He's coming again this Wednesday. They can expend some of that energy. And Donald Trump is really still trying to figure out how to respond to this whole Harris machine that is moving forward in this energy. I've been trying to pay attention tonight what a lot of Republicans have said, and even today, Chairman Whatley, when they've been talking about tonight, they've been talking about how, Democrats are pushing Joe Biden off the stage. This just a couple months after they said that there's no way Joe Biden could last an election. Well, now they're saying, they pushed him aside and anointed someone who didn't go through a primary process. And how all of this plays out after Labor Day, I think, is really the key to this, because they're feeling really good right now. You can sense that energy in the room, and Josh and Taylor and Kevin could say a lot better than I could, obviously not being in the room, but you just watching them from afar, you can sense the energy is out there. But how do they make this last and turn into action in the coming days and weeks, and how they keep that up is the real big question.
Okay, thank you for that, Tim. And let's go out to Wisconsin. I mean, Jason, the Democratic Party faithful have their marching orders, but they've got a very short amount of time to put together an entire field operation that, with a candidate they did not expect to be at the head of the ticket.
Well, and so far so good for them, Errol. One of the things that a lot of the pollsters, of course, have talked about is a warning of sorts to Harris and her supporters that there's a honeymoon period going on right now. But the honeymoon doesn't have to last too long. We're not 10 months out. We're not a year out from Election Day, of course. We're just essentially a few weeks out at this point. So can they keep that honeymoon going up until November? That's obviously the goal. Now, one of the things that really has stuck out to me so far here in night one of the DNC, and hearing from former Secretary of State and former First Lady Hillary Clinton, obviously we're getting set to hear from President Joe Biden. We're going to hear from Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Bill Clinton, Jason Carter, the grandson of former President Jimmy Carter. We're seeing these rising stars for the Democrats out there, but we're also seeing these figureheads in the Democratic Party. And that's not necessarily something we saw rather for Republicans here at the RNC in Milwaukee. Jamie Raskin touched on it there. More than 24 former Trump officials are disavowing his candidacy. They're not supporting him this time around, most notably, of course, his former vice president in Mike Pence. So for a lot of viewers that are kind of taking in both of these conventions, you're being reminded of these former figureheads of the Democratic Party. I don't think you necessarily were among the Republicans. And one last note that Hillary Clinton brought up herself, of course, to ignore the polls that are out there right now, because 8 years ago, August 19, 2016, the average of all polls at Real Clear Politics had her up 6 points going forward to November. Right now, Harris in that same average of all polls, up by 1.5 points. So for Republicans out there, obviously they know firsthand anything can happen.
Yes, and we've already seen in this season alone that a lot of surprises have happened, and many more might lie ahead. Thanks for that, Jason. Let's go out to California. And Alex, on the stage right now, addressing the delegates are some families, and they just ran a video along the same theme, talking about reproductive rights, something that we know the Democrats have a message, they have a goal, they have a candidate. Have they been pounding this issue as loudly as you would have expected?
I think that they have been. There are just so many issues. One of the videos that they showed just a few moments ago was actually one, if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure it's the same footage that we saw when President Biden was still the candidate. So this has certainly been an issue that they've been on for a while. I think, much like with many other issues, the issue might be the same. In many ways, the policy might be the same. But who is providing that message can make a huge difference. The difference between an older man and someone like Kamala Harris to talk about these issues just has, as the kids say today, very different different vibes. And we know with reproductive rights and abortion on the ballot in very key critical states right now, we know with abortion is one of the top issues for many voters across the country, that this is a very strategic move and certainly will be something that I believe will not only hear about this evening, but we'll hear throughout the campaign. I think one of the tricky things for the Harris campaign is we saw there just a few moments ago, this mother who had had such a traumatic experience. After all this joyful, celebration that we've seen tonight, it does bring the mood down a little bit. And you do have to be careful calibrating. I was just hearing one reporter saying that the moments of joy have gotten much bigger response than kind of the attacks against Donald Trump. So you have to be very careful here into how much do you got to galvanize that audience in the nation into voting, and yet they've been talking about how it's a campaign of joy. So I think that's a tension point right now for the Harris-Walz team.
It's interesting, Alex. I mean, there were some Democratic strategists who met with the Harris campaign just the other day. New York Times reported this, where one of actually it was CNN, and one of the things that the strategists said to the Harris team was one of their slogans, "We won't go back." They were saying, well, elections are about the future. People want to look to the future, not to the past. On the other hand, when you're trying to activate people around this issue of reproductive rights, the reality is the overturning of Roe versus Wade is something that throws people into the past. How should they try and navigate that question?
Well, I think, I've heard elected officials up and down the board talk about the fact that it is remarkable for them. The person that comes to mind is Congresswoman Barbara Lee. We heard earlier tonight from Latifah Simon, who's running to replace her in Kamala Harris's home district of Oakland. Barbara Lee traveled to Mexico to have an abortion when she was very young. And she said, I could never imagine that in this point in the timeline in American history, the daughters of today would have fewer freedoms than I had back in the day and that we have enjoyed for so long. And so it's a bit of a weird time warp for many people to think about what rights women have had, where we've progressed and where we have not. I do think it is a very strategic point of attack for the Harris-Walz campaign to say, when you talk about we will not go back and forward, think about that image of Kamala Harris you might have seen by LA-based street artist Shepard Fairey. It is a portrait of Kamala Harris, and the word this time, it was hope for Barack Obama, and for Kamala Harris, it is forward. And I think forward in some ways is a repeat of the past and a reminder that in recent years, we have really revoked many of the rights that so many Americans have enjoyed.
Okay, thank you for that, Alex. The governor of Kentucky, Governor Beshear, is going to address the convention. He's a bit of a unicorn in the South. It's a deep red state that he represents, and yet here's the Democratic governor.
Hadley Duvall is one of the bravest people I've ever met. I'm amazed at the courage it takes to share her pain, to share her truth. Yet Donald Trump brags about tearing a constitutional right away from Hadley and every other woman and girl in our country. That's why we must tear away any chance he can ever be president ever again. In 21 states, Trump's actions have resulted in extreme bans on abortion in my state, even in cases of rape, incest, and non-viable pregnancies. That leaves 12-year-old girls like Hadley with no options. That fails any test of humanity, any test of basic decency, any test of whether you have any underlying empathy. Thankfully, this extremism is being soundly rejected all over our country. In Kentucky, we put reproductive freedom on the ballot last November, and I beat Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell's hand-picked candidate by more than 5 percentage points. This November, we're going to beat them again. Elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and protect reproductive freedom. Folks, Donald Trump appointed the Supreme Court justices who got us into this mess. His Project 2025 goes even further. Here's the thing. Trump and Vance simply don't believe in your freedom. Trump says people are absolutely thrilled that women have their basic rights eliminated. J.D. Vance says women should stay in violent marriages and that pregnancies resulting from rape are simply inconvenient. Their policies give rapists more rights than their victims. That's not inconvenient, it's just plain wrong. And a woman grieving a non-viable pregnancy shouldn't be required to carry it to term just to listen to her child die or to hear no sound at all. All women should have the freedom to make their own decisions. Freedom over their own bodies. Freedom about whether to pursue IVF. Freedom about whether to have children at all. How we treat people transcends party lines. It goes right to the heart of who we are. My faith teaches me the golden rule that I am to love my neighbor as myself. And the parable of the Good Samaritan says we are all each other's neighbors. So I want anyone watching tonight, Republican, Independent, Democrat, to know that you are welcome here. We believe in an America where we live out our values, end anger politics once and for all, and move beyond this us versus them by remembering we are all Americans. That's how Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lead. They both called to ask how they could help Kentucky in recovering from natural disasters. They helped us improve our roads, our bridges, and invested in our people. They didn't ask me who Kentuckians voted for. They asked me what Kentuckians needed, and folks, they delivered. Kamala Harris gets it. She knows we must move beyond anger, extremism, and division, that everyone has dignity and deserves respect. America, we're going to win. And we're going to win by staying true to our values of compassion, empathy, and doing right by our neighbors. I'm so proud to be all in for the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Thank you.
Please welcome Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock.
Well, hello, America. Thank you so very much. On January 5th, 2021, the people of Georgia did an amazing thing. They sent a black kid who grew up in public housing, and the Jewish son of an immigrant to the United States Senate in one fell swoop. And among those Georgians was my then 82-year-old mother. She grew up in Waycross, Georgia. Do you know where that is? It's way across Georgia. She grew up in Waycross, Georgia, where she picked other people's cotton and other people's tobacco. But because this is America, the 82-year-old hands that used to pick somebody else's cotton and somebody else's tobacco picked her youngest son to be a United States Senator. This is my America. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, America, for raising your voice and using your vote. A vote is a kind of prayer for the world we desire for ourselves and for our children, and our prayers are stronger when we pray together. And so together we flipped the Senate, held the House, and we sent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to the White House. Together we vaccinated our citizens, we fortified our cities and our towns, and we stood by our small businesses. Together we set out to heal the land. A nation besieged by a deadly pandemic and beset by the awful and divisive rhetoric of a man too small for the office entrusted him or the task set before him. The day after my January 5th election, he instigated an insurrection, a violent assault on our nation's capital and the peaceful transfer of power, all driven by the big lie. But behind the big lie was an even bigger lie. It is the lie that this increasingly diverse American electorate does not get to determine the future of the country. The lie and the logic of January 6th is a sickness. It is a kind of cancer that then metastasized into dozens of voter suppression laws all across our country. And we must be vigilant tonight because these anti-democratic forces are at work right now in Georgia and all across our country. And the question is, who will heal the land? And so here we are, America. Are you ready? Are you ready to stand up in this moral moment? Stand up for the best in the American covenant. Elections are about the character of a country. And we must decide, again, we are the latest generation of Americans who get to decide what kind of country we want to be. And we must choose between the promise of January 5th and the peril of January 6th. A nation that embraces all of us or just some of us. Donald Trump's America is the America of January 6th. People who have no vision traffic in division. He does not know how to lead us, and so he wants to divide us. America, make no mistake, Donald Trump is a plague on the American conscience. He is a clear and present threat to the precious covenant we share with one another. And yes, I saw him holding the Bible and endorsing a Bible as if it needed his endorsement. He should try reading it. It says, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. He should try reading it. It says, love your neighbor as yourself. It says, inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, you have done it also unto me. I choose the American covenant. E pluribus unum, out of many one. I choose January 5th. I choose a nation that provides a path for ordinary people and gives every child a chance. And that's Joe Biden's America. And he's been fighting for it for more than a half century. President Biden, America is so much better because of you, a true patriot who has always put the people first. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. But I'll tell you something else. Not only is that Joe Biden's America, that's Kamala Harris's America. She was leading with Joe Biden when we expanded the child tax credit, cutting child poverty in America nearly in half. We ought to renew it. She cast a tie-breaking vote for my bill capping the cost of insulin to no more than $35 per month for seniors. We ought to extend it to everybody. Together we passed an infrastructure bill, bolstered American manufacturing and clean energy, an investment in the house that we all share together. And I've got news for you, we are just getting started. Are you ready to win this election? Kamala Harris and Tim Walz represent the new way forward. We're not going back. We're not going back because we are the United States of America. We always dream about the future. And so forward on women's reproductive rights, because we believe that a patient's room is too small and cramped a space for a woman, her doctor, and the United States government. That's too many people in the room. Forward on worker rights, because most people do not mind working. They just want to share in the prosperity that they are creating for others. Forward on voting rights, forward on affordable housing and access to health care. We are moving forward. And so I'm inspired tonight. I'm inspired by all of you. I'm inspired by the resilience of an American spirit that has rebounded from the pandemic and is holding at bay the forces that are trying to divide us. And I'm inspired tonight by the memory of my late father, a preacher and a junk man. Monday through Friday, he lifted old broken cars and put them on the back of an old rig. But on Sunday morning, the man who lifted broken cars lifted broken people whom other people had discarded and told them that they were God's somebody. My dad discovered strength in the broken places, a power made perfect in weakness. And so I'm convinced tonight that we can lift the broken even as we climb. I'm convinced tonight that we can heal sick bodies. We can heal the wounds that divide us. We can heal a planet in peril. We can heal the land. And in a strange way, the pandemic taught us how. A contagious airborne disease means that I have a personal stake in the health of my neighbor. If she's sick, I may get sick also. Her health care is good for my health. I'm just trying to tell you that we are as close in our humanity as a cough. I need my neighbor's children to be okay so that my children will be okay. I need all of my neighbor's children to be okay. Poor inner city children in Atlanta and poor children of Appalachia. I need the poor children of Israel and the poor children of Gaza. I need Israelis and Palestinians. I need those in the Congo, those in Haiti, those in Ukraine. I need American children on both sides of the track to be okay. Because we are all God's children. And so let's stand together. Let's work together. Let's organize together. Let's pray together. Let's stand together. Let's heal the land. God bless you. Keep the faith and keep looking up.
Please welcome Delaware Senator Chris Coons.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is how you give a speech. The Reverend Raphael Warnock, who in addition to being a United States Senator, is the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, just addressed the convention. And let me go to Jason Fechner. We haven't talked in a bit. This was supposed to be Josh Robin, actually, there in the arena. Josh, this was supposed to be the farewell for Joe Biden. And we're after 11 o'clock in New York, after 10 o'clock there in Chicago, way behind schedule, although the Biden family is supposed to come up next after Senator Coons, who just took the stage. What happened here?
They didn't crack down on people having a speech that only was given to a certain amount of time. I mean, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was only given 2 minutes. They're way behind schedule here. And, you know, in the ultimate scheme of things, I'm not sure how much it matters. But for now, I can say that it looks like Joe Biden, who got the old cane pulling him off the stage metaphorically for this nomination, is getting, I would say, a diss now because he's being pushed at a prime time on the East Coast. And, you know, I understand that politicians want to speak and sometimes things run late, but I think now a lot of people are wondering why there wasn't more of an attempt to have Joe Biden make sure that he got his final speech before this kind of major audience in primetime. I think we actually have something funny about this, which is that The Daily Show is speaking for a lot of Americans when they are, there it is, a little phony note from Joe Biden, my fellow Americans, it is way too late, I'm going to bed. I think that phony note speaks for a lot of people, but Joe Biden still has to speak. We still have James Taylor, who's going to serenade him. We still have a tribute video that's apparently pretty long. We still have the First Lady, and we still have Ashley Biden. I think the producers are probably going to have a late-night meeting and try to figure out what happens on the second night, because this is not good.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. I've certainly seen other situations where they said, hey, the headliner goes in prime time, and, you cut whoever you have to cut to make that happen. I know
Totally.
I see on the list of speakers, 1 or 2 dropped out, but some that weren't on the list popped up. So, it's a management problem. And, we'll see. We'll be talking, I guess, going into the early morning of tomorrow, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, look, Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock made a great speech. That speech maybe could have been done tomorrow. I think that they bumped Grace Meng, who's a congresswoman from New York City. The point of this speaks to a little bit of a bigger issue. And again, I'm not sure come October, November, this really matters. But look, I just spent 4 days at the Republican National Convention. It was a lot crisper there. The messages were very much set. There were fewer speakers. We know what they were going to be saying, and I think people could follow along. Now, I don't know if that's going to translate. I suspect that it's not into an advantage in the big scheme for the former President Trump. But it does show that the Democrats do have somewhat of a garbled message here, at least to my eyes, where they're trying to cram a lot of things. They want to identify Kamala Harris before a national audience. A lot of people still don't know who she is. They want to really tout economic issues, middle-class issues. They really want to tout abortion, and they want to give the proverbial golden watch to Joe Biden. And right now, nothing, it isn't going all that well. I mean, we're getting into the late night here.
Yeah, and to their credit, of course, the delegates are all there. It looks like from the wide shot that every seat is still filled. Some of that, I think,
Yes.
is owing to the presidential level of security. A lot of security because the President of the United States is going to speak shortly. Let's go down to the floor, in fact, where Kevin Fry is talking with some people from, I believe, the Ohio delegation.
Yep, we're continuing our tour, but before we do that, I did want to show you, Errol, that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are both in the audience now. They're both up that way, underneath one of the banners. You can kind of see Kamala Harris sitting next to Doug Emhoff and then Tim Walz and his wife. So they are in the House for this speech ahead of Joe Biden's essential passing of the torch, which is going to be coming up, we presume soon, but obviously, as you two were just talking about, we are getting well into the midnight hour. Let's walk over this way and talk to one of those Ohio delegates we were mentioning just a moment ago, and she's taking a photo because we had to talk to her because of the hat. And I have to ask Helen, why the hat?
I'm carrying the past and the future in my hat with the pins. They're pins from friends who have given me, who are no longer with me. And then the pin for the future is I am Roe. And that's for the future of my kids and my daughters.
Now, this is your first in-person convention because you were supposed to be a delegate in 2020, but obviously everything was canceled then, correct? So what has this experience been like for you? Because you are carrying a lot of history. And I'm seeing over here, we're looking at Dukakis, John Kerry, the list goes on. Jimmy Carter's on there. What is it like to be here yourself?
It's really exciting. It's energizing. I'm a committed Democrat all the way and love to work on Democratic campaigns. And to feel the energy in this room is just invigorating.
How is there a chance in your mind that Ohio could be blue?
Absolutely. We're on the ground. After Kamala Harris was nominated through the roll call process, there were 24,000 Ohioans who signed up to volunteer through the Ohio Democratic Party. So that, to me, gets boots on the ground, people knocking doors, telling the story of how Kamala Harris can help the middle class, help everyone and bring freedom for so many.
And certainly try to get Senator Sherrod Brown reelected, which is really important.
The Supreme Court, Ohio Supreme Court could flip.
Certainly. One last thing I wanted to ask. We're about to hear from Jill Biden. We're about to hear from Joe Biden. What do you think his legacy is going to be?
Everything that he's done in the past 3.5 years, which has superseded any other president, bringing the inflation rate down, the Infrastructure Act, CHIPS, taking care of kids, lowering medication costs, and anything with helping the middle class with getting jobs.
Helen Sheehan, I appreciate your time and your hat. Thank you for our interview. I appreciate it. Ohio Delegate Helen Sheehan. We are now in an introductory video, I believe, as the Biden portion of the evening is really now beginning to coalesce and take shape down here on the floor. And here comes Joe Biden, Errol.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin. In fact, let's go right to the podium.
First
Jill
Lady
Biden,
of the United States,
First Lady of the United
Jill
States.
Biden.
Let's listen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Love you too. Joe and I have been together for almost 50 years. And still, there are moments when I fall in love with him all over again. Like when I handed him our baby Ashley for the first time and saw the smile that lit up his face. Or on nights after an exhausting day working in the Senate, when he would read one more bedtime story just because the kids asked. When he stops on a rope line because he sees someone grieving who needs to know that everything is going to be all right one day. Or to encourage that child with a stutter to find the confidence she needs. Those moments when I'm reminded of all he's accomplished in the name of something bigger than himself. Receiving the Medal of Freedom with humility. Placing his hand on our family Bible to take his oath of office. And weeks ago, when I saw him dig deep into his soul and decide to no longer seek re-election and endorse Kamala Harris. With faith and conviction, Joe knows that our nation's strength doesn't come from intimidation or cruelty. It comes from the small acts of kindness that heal deep wounds, from service to the communities that make us who we are, from love of a country that shines with promise and renewal. Kamala Harris knows that too. Our son, Beau, first worked with Kamala when he was Attorney General of Delaware. He told me at the dinner table one night, "Mom, she's special, someone to keep your eye on." And he was right. Joe and I know Kamala. We have seen her courage, her determination, and her leadership up close. Kamala and Tim, you will win. And you are inspiring a new generation. We are all a part of something bigger than ourselves, and we are stronger than we know. The future of our country is in the hands of those in this room and all of you watching at home. It's going to take all of us, and we can't afford to lose. With faith in each other, hope for a brighter future, and love for our country, we will fight and we will win together. Thank you. Thank you.
Please welcome First Daughter, Ashley Biden.
Good evening. I have this memory. It's the eve of my 8th birthday. Dad is still in D.C., tending to urgent matters in the Senate. That night, as a surprise, Mom told me, Bo, and Hunter to get in the car. I remember pulling up to the Wilmington Amtrak station, riding up the escalator to the platform. The train stops, doors open, and Dad steps out. As soon as I saw him, I run down that platform and jump into his arms. Like magic, Mom brought out a cake, they sang happy birthday, and I blew out the candles. Dad hugged me, and he said that he had to get back to work. He crossed to the southbound train, and off he went to D.C. That was a snapshot of one moment, of one day, on this extraordinary journey of being Joe Biden's daughter. Joe Biden is the OG girl dad. He told me I could be anything and I could do anything. As a child, I would sit on the leather chair in his office doing my homework, and he would sit next to me doing his work, drafting the Violence Against Women Act. And he wasn't just a girl dad. I could see, and he wasn't just a girl dad, I could see that he valued and trusted women. How he listened to his mother, how he believed in his sister, and most of all, how he respected my mother's career. Dad was always there, doing everything he could to be a true partner to her. Dad, you always tell us, but we don't tell you enough, that you are the love of our lives and the life of our love. I had my wedding reception in my parents' backyard. At the time, my dad was vice president. But he was also that dad who literally set up the entire reception. He was riding around in his John Deere four-wheeler, fixing the place settings, arranging the plants, and by the way, he was very emotional. I thought that I would be a mess, but he was the one crying, and I was the one who had to comfort him. Before he walked me down the aisle, he turned to me and said, that he would always be my best friend. All these years later, Dad, you are still my best friend. His example in service inspired my career. I'm a social worker in Philadelphia. I support formerly incarcerated women as they heal from past trauma and they reclaim their lives. Dad always told me that I was no better than anybody else and nobody was better than me. He taught me that everyone deserves a fair shot and that we shouldn't leave anyone behind. That's what you learn from a fighter who has been underestimated his entire life. When I look at Dad, I see grace, strength, and humility. I see one of the most consequential leaders ever in history. And I also know that he never stops thinking about you, about your dreams, about your dignity, about your opportunities, about your family. Dad knows that family is everything. When Hunter and I lost our brother Bo to cancer in 2015, the grief and the pain felt like it might never end. Dad had the capacity to step out of his own pain and absorb ours. And I know that Bo is here with us tonight, as he is always with us. After Bo passed, I got this tattoo on my wrist. It says, "Courage, dear heart." A reminder to myself to keep going, to get back up, like my dad has always done. He has taught me that a courageous heart is a miraculous thing. A courageous heart can heal a family. A courageous heart can heal a nation, and maybe even the world. And now, this election requires the courageous hearts of all of us. In 2020, my dad selected Kamala Harris to beat Donald Trump. And he knows in 2024, she will beat Donald Trump again. So tonight, I am asking you, if you stood with us in 2020, call upon your courageous heart. Stand with us today. Work harder than you have ever worked before in your life. This is the fight of our lifetime. Our freedom, our democracy, our reproductive rights. All of this, all of it is on the ballot. And I know together we can do this because my dad helped show us the way. And now I would like to introduce my father, your 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was my daughter. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for so. I tell you what. To my dearest daughter, Ashley, God love you, you're incredible. Thank you for the introduction and for being my courageous heart, along with Hunter and our entire family, and especially our rock, Jill. Who, as those of you who know us, she still leaves me both breathless and speechless. Everybody knows her. I love her more than she loves me. She walks down the stairs and I still get that going boom, boom, boom. You all will know me. No, I'm kidding. Let's give a special round of applause to our First Lady, Jill Biden. My dad used to have an expression, for real. He'd say, Joey, family is the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I love you all. Folks. And America, I love you. Folks, let me ask you. Let me ask you. Are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, President and Vice President of the United States?
My fellow Democrats, my fellow Americans, nearly 4 years ago, in winter, on the steps of the Capitol, on a cold January day, I raised my right hand and I swore an oath to you and to God to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and to faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States. In front of me was a city surrounded by the National Guard. Behind me, a Capitol just 2 weeks before had been overrun by a violent mob. But I knew then, from the bottom of my heart, that I knew now, there is no place in America for political violence. None. You cannot say you love your country only when you win. In that moment, I wasn't looking to the past. I was looking to the future. I spoke of the work at hand, the moment we had to meet. It was, as I told you then, a winter of peril and possibility. Of peril and possibility. We're in the grip of a once-in-a-century pandemic, historic joblessness, a call for racial justice long overdue, clear and present threats to our very democracy. Thank you. And yet I believed then, and I believe now, that progress was and is possible. Justice is achievable. And our best days are not behind us, they're before us. Now it's summer. The winter has passed. With a grateful heart, I stand before you now on this August night to report that democracy has prevailed. Democracy has delivered. And now democracy must be preserved. You've heard me say it before. We're facing an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine the fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. That's not hyperbole, I mean it literally. We're in a battle for the very soul of America. I ran for president in 2020 because of what I saw in Charlottesville in August of 2017. Extremists coming out of the woods, carrying torches, their veins bulging from their necks, carrying Nazi swastikas, and chanting the same exact anti-Semitic bile that was heard in Germany in the early 30s. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and the Ku Klux Klan, so emboldened by a president then in the White House that they saw as an ally. They didn't even bother to wear their hoods. Hate was on the march in America. Old ghosts and new garments, stirring up the oldest divisions, stoking the oldest fears, giving oxygen to the oldest forces that they long sought to tear apart America. In the process, a young woman was killed. When I contacted her mother, I asked about what happened. She told me. When the president was asked what he thought had happened, Donald Trump said, and I quote, There are very fine people on both sides. My God. That's what he said. That is what he said and what he meant. That's when I realized, had to listen to the admonition of my dead son, I could not stay in the sidelines. So I ran. Because I had no intention of running again. I just lost part of my soul. But I ran with a deep conviction. In America, I know and believe in an America where honesty, dignity, decency still matter. An America where everyone has a fair shot and hate has no safe harbor. An America where the fundamental creed of this nation, that all of us are created equal, is still very much alive. And a broad coalition of Americans joined with me. 81 million voters voted for us. More than any time in all of history. Because of all of you in this room and others, we came together in 2020 to save democracy. As your president, I've been determined to keep America moving forward, not going back, to stand against hate and violence in all its forms, to be a nation where we not only live with but thrive on diversity, demonizing no one, leaving no one behind, and becoming the nation that we profess to be. I also ran to rebuild the backbone of America, the middle class. I made a commitment to you that I'd be a president for all Americans, whether you voted for me or not. We have done that. Studies show the major bills we have passed actually delivered more to red states than blue. Because the job of the president is to deliver to all of America. Because of you, and I'm not exaggerating, because of you, we've had one of the most extraordinary 4 years of progress ever, period. When I say we, I mean Kamala and me. Just think about it. COVID no longer controls our lives. We've gone from economic crisis to the strongest economy in the entire world. Record 60 million new jobs. Record small business growth. Record high stock market. Record high 401ks. Wages up and inflation down, way down, and continuing to go down. The smallest racial wealth gap in 20 years. And yes, we both know we have more to do, but we're moving in the right direction. More Americans have peace of mind that comes from having health insurance. More Americans have health insurance today than ever before in American history. And after, as a young senator beginning to fight for 50 years to give Medicare the power to negotiate low prescription drug prices, we finally beat Big Pharma. And guess who cast the tie-breaking vote? Vice President, soon-to-be President Kamala Harris. And now it's the law of the land. Instead of paying $400 a month for insulin, seniors with diabetes will pay $35 a month. The law we passed already includes, starting in January, every senior's total prescription cost can be capped at $2,000 no matter how expensive the drugs they have. And what we don't focus on, and our Republican friends don't seem to understand, our reforms don't just save seniors money, they save the American taxpayers money. You know what we just passed saves? It saved $160 billion over the next decade. That's not hyperbole. It's because Medicare no longer has to pay those exorbitant prices to the big pharma. But look, thank you, Kamala, too. Look, folks, how can we have the strongest economy in the world without the best infrastructure in the world? Donald Trump promised Infrastructure Week every week for 4 years, and he never built a damn thing. But now, because of what Kamala and I have done, remember we were told we couldn't get it done. Remember when we came into office, we couldn't get anything passed? But right now, we're giving America an infrastructure decade, not week. We're modernizing our roads, our bridges, our ports, our airports, our trains, our buses. We're removing every lead pipe from schools and homes so every child can drink clean water. We're providing affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where they live, not unlike what Roosevelt did with electricity. And so much more. We are uniting the country. We're growing our economy. We're improving our quality of life. And we're building a better America. Because that's who we are. How can we be the strongest nation in the world without leading the world in science and technology? After years of importing 90% of our semiconductor chips from abroad, which America invented those chips, our Chips and Science Act meant that private companies from around the world are now investing literally tens of billions of dollars to build new chip factories right here in America. And over that period, they'll create tens of thousands of jobs. And many of those jobs in the so-called fabs, the buildings that make the chips, that's being constructed now. And guess what? The average salary in those fabs, size of a football field, will be over $100,000 a year, and you don't need a college degree. Because of you and so many electeds out there, American manufacturing is back. Where the hell to say we wouldn't lead the world in manufacturing? 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. Our Republican friends and others made sure they'd go abroad to get the cheapest labor. We used to import products and export jobs. Now we export American products and create American jobs right here in America, where jobs belong. With every new job, with every new factory, pride and hope is being brought back to communities throughout the country that were left behind. You know you're from them, many of you. You know what it's like when that factory closed, where your mother, your father, your grandmother, grandfather worked. And now you're back, providing once again, proving that Wall Street didn't build America, the middle class built America, and unions built the middle class. It's been my view since I came to the Senate. And that's why I'm proud to have been the first president to walk a picket line and be labeled the most pro-union president in history, and I accept it. It's a fact. Because when unions do well, we all do well. You got it, man. You got it. I agree. I'm proud. Look, remember he told we couldn't get anything done because we couldn't get anything done in the Congress? But with your support, we passed the most significant climate law in the history of mankind. Over $370 billion. Cutting carbon emissions in half by 2030. Launching a climate corps, similar to AmeriCorps and Peace Corps, creating tens of thousands of jobs for young people of the future who are going to make sure this continues. Creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in clean energy for American workers, including the IBEW installing 500,000 charging stations all across America. And in the process, reducing carbon emissions. And we're seeing it. We're seeing to it that the first beneficiaries of environmental initiatives are those fence-line communities that have been smothered by the legacy of pollution. Louisiana and Delaware, Route 9, all the factories, all those chemical factories are right next to the poorest neighborhoods. They're the ones we're going to bring back. And how? How can we be the greatest nation in the world without the best education system in the world? Donald Trump and the Republican friends, they not only can't think, they can't read very well. Seriously, think about it. Look at their Project 2025. They want to do away with the Department of Education. Well, during the pandemic, Kamala and I helped states and cities get back their schools back open. And we gave public school teachers a raise. We created apprenticeships with business and the communities, putting students on a path to a good paying job, whether or not they go to college. And by the way, we're making college a hell of a lot more affordable. Increasing Pell Grants by $900. Over $15 billion to HBCUs. Minority service education, including Hispanic institutions and tribal colleges. We kept our commitment to provide more student relief than ever by lifting the burden of helping millions of families so they could get married, start a family, buy a home, and begin to build family wealth and contribute to the community and grow our economy. It's not costing us, it's creating more wealth. We fundamentally transformed how our economy grows. From the middle out and the bottom up instead of the top down. You know, my dad used to say there wasn't a whole hell of a lot to drop down on my kitchen table at the end of the month. I come from a basic middle-class family. 3-bedroom house, 4 kids, a grandpop living with us. Decent neighborhood, but never a penny to spare. And look, that top-down notion never worked. A lot of Democrats didn't think it worked, thought it worked, but it doesn't. And when we did all that, what we've done, everybody can do well. Everybody. Donald Trump calls America a failing nation. No, I'm serious. But think about this. Think about this. He publicly says to the whole world, I'm going to say something outrageous. I know more foreign leaders by their first names and know them well than anybody alive. Just because I'm so damn old. But I'm not joking. Think of the message he sends around the world when he talks about America being a failing nation. He says we're losing. He's the loser. He's dead wrong. Many of you are very successful people who travel the world. Name me a country in the world that doesn't think we're the leading nation in the world. Without America, not a joke, think about it. I'm being literal. Who could lead the world other than the United States of America? Well, guess what? America's winning, and the world's better off for it. America's more prosperous, and Americans are safer today than under Donald Trump. Trump continues to lie about crime in America, like everything else. Guess what? On his watch, the murder rate went up 30%, the biggest increase in history. Meanwhile, we made the largest investment, Kamala and I, in public safety ever. Now, the murder rate is falling faster than any time in history. Violent crime has dropped to the lowest level in more than 50 years. And crime will keep coming down when we put a prosecutor in the Oval Office instead of a convicted felon. And folks, the distinguished senator from the C Senator from California and I passed the first ban on assault weapons. And guess what? It worked. If we care about public safety, we need to prevent gun violence. And what makes me ashamed when I travel the world, which I do, more children in America are killed by a gunshot than any other cause in the United States. More die from a bullet than cancer, accidents, or anything else in the United States of America. My God. That's why Kamala and I are proud. We beat the NRA when we passed the first major bipartisan gun safety law in 30 years. I'm serious. That comes from here. And now it's time to ban assault weapons again. And demand universal background checks. It's hard. I never thought I'd stand before a crowd of Democrats and refer to a president as a liar so many times. No, I'm not trying to be funny. It's sad. Trump continues to lie about the border. Here's what he won't tell you. Trump killed the strongest bipartisan border deal in the history of the United States that we negotiated with the Senate Republicans. It took 4 weeks. Once it passed, and they acknowledged the most expansive border change in American history, he called senators to say, don't support the bipartisan bill, because he said it would help me politically and hurt him politically. My God. No, I'm serious. Think about it. Not a joke. Ask even the press who doesn't like me. They'll tell you that's true. Typically, Trump, once again, putting himself first and America last. Then I had to take executive action. The result of the executive action I took, border encounters have dropped over 50%. In fact, there are fewer border crossings today than when Donald Trump left office. And unlike Trump, we will not demonize immigrants, saying they're the poison of blood of America, poison the blood of our country. Kamala and I are committed to strengthening legal immigration, including protecting dreamers and more. And here's what else I believe in. Protecting your freedom to vote, your freedom to love who you love, and your freedom to choose. In its decision overturning Roe v. Wade, as you heard earlier tonight, the United States Supreme Court majority wrote the following, quote, women are not without electoral or political power. No kidding. MAGA Republicans found out the power of women in 2022. And Donald Trump is going to find out the power of women in 2024. Watch. And where Trump and his mega Republican right-wingers seek to erase history, we Democrats continue to write history and make more history. I'm proud to have kept my commitment to appoint the first black woman in the United States Supreme Court. Ketanji Brown Jackson, a symbol for every young woman in America that you can do anything. I'm proud that I've kept my commitment to have an administration that looks like America and that taps in to the full talent of our nation. Most diverse cabinet in history, including the first black woman of South Asian descent to serve as vice president. And will soon serve as the 47th president of the United States. She is good. Look. Thank you, Kamala. Folks, I've long said we have many obligations as a nation, but I got in trouble years ago for saying I'd make no apologies. We have only one truly sacred obligation: to prepare and equip those we send to war and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. That's why I'm so proud to have written and signed the PACT Act, one of the most significant laws ever, helping veterans and their families exposed to toxic materials like burn pits in Agent Orange. I was around during the Vietnam War. It's hard. Nobody was able to prove that their illness was a consequence of Agent Orange. And no one was able to prove initially that because they lived in burn pits like my son lived next to in Iraq for a year, that is the cause of their illness. But because of the PACT Act, a surviving spouse with 2 children is now eligible for a stipend of about $3,000 a month. And those children who lost a parent are eligible for tuition benefits to go to college and to get job training. It's already helping over 1 million veterans and their families just so far. Well, I love them, and I'm so proud of my son's service. We get it. But guess who doesn't get it and doesn't respect our veterans? We know from his own Chief of Staff, the 4-star General John Kelly, that Trump, when in Europe, would not go to the grave sites in France. The brave service members who gave their lives to this country. He called them suckers and losers. Who in the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is? There's no words for a person. They are not the words of a person not worthy of being commander-in-chief, period. Not then, not now, and not ever. I mean that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Just as no commander-in-chief should ever bow down to a dictator, the way Trump bows down to Putin. I never have, and I promise you, Kamala Harris will never do it. Will never bow down. When Trump left office, Europe and NATO was in tatters. Not a joke. America First doctrine changed our whole image in the world. Well, they gave the hours, about 190 hours sum total, being my counterparts or heads of state in Europe, to strengthen NATO. We did. We united Europe like it hadn't been united for years, adding Finland and Sweden to NATO. 10 days before he died, Henry Kissinger called and said, not since Napoleon has Europe not looked over their shoulder at Russia with dread, until now. Until now. Well, guess what? Putin thought he'd take Kyiv in 3 days. 3 years later, Ukraine is still free. When I came to office, the conventional wisdom was that China would inevitably surpass the United States. They haven't noticed. No one's saying that now. And we'll keep working to bring hostages home and end the war in Gaza and bring peace and security in the Middle East. As you know, I wrote a peace treaty for Gaza. A few days ago, I put forward a proposal that brought us closer to doing that than we've done since October 7th. We're working around the clock, my Secretary of State, to prevent a wider war and reunite hostages with their families and surge humanitarian health and food assistance into Gaza now. To end the civilian suffering of the Palestinian people, and finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war. Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides. Just as we worked around the clock to bring home wrongfully detained Americans and others from Russia, in one of the most complicated swaps in history, but they're home. Kamala and I are going to keep working to bring all Americans wrongfully detained around the world home. I mean it. Folks, I've got 5 months left in my presidency. I've got a lot to do. I intend to get it done. It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more. I love my country more. And all this talk about how I'm angry at all those people who said I should step down, that's not true. Thank you. I love my country more, and we need to preserve our democracy. In 2024, we need you to vote. We need you to keep the Senate. We need you to win back the House of Representatives. And above all, we need you to beat Donald Trump. And elect Kamala and Tim President and Vice President of the United States of America. Look, they'll continue to lead America forward, creating more jobs, standing up for workers, growing the economy, lower the cost to American families so they just have a little more breathing room. We've made incredible progress, but we have more work to do. And Kamala and Tim will continue to take on corporate greed and bring down cost of food. They'll keep taking on Big Pharma, making insulin $35 a month, not just for seniors, but for everyone in America. And capping prescription drug costs at a total of $2,000, not just for seniors, but for everyone. And folks, that's going to save America again tens of billions of dollars. Folks, they'll make housing more affordable, building 3 million new homes, providing $25,000 down payment assistance for the first-time home buyer, more than the 10 we approved. Donald Trump wants a new tax on imported goods, food, gas, clothing, and more. You know what that will cost the average family, according to the experts? $3,900 a year in a tax. No, that's a fact. Kamala and Tim will make the child care tax credit permanent. Lifting millions of children out of poverty and helping millions of families get ahead. But you know what Trump has? He created the largest debt any president had in 4 years with his $2 trillion tax cut for the wealthy. Well, Trump has a new plan. He wants to provide a $5 billion tax cut for corporations and the very wealthy. Read it. Put us further in debt. And folks, you know we have 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what their average tax rate they pay? 8.2%. If we just increase their taxes we proposed to 25%, which isn't the highest tax rate even, it would raise $500 billion new dollars over 10 years. They'd still be very wealthy. Look, Kamala and Tim are going to make them pay their fair share. They'll protect Social Security and Medicare. Trump wants to cut Social Security and Medicare. Kamala and Tim will protect your freedom. They'll protect your your right to vote. They'll protect your civil rights. And you know Trump will do everything to ban abortion nationwide. Oh, he will. You know, Kamala and Tim will do everything they possibly can. That's why you have to elect a Senate and a House to restore Roe v. Wade. The ancient Greeks taught us that character is destiny. Character is destiny. For me and Jill, we know Kamala and Doug are people of character. It's been our honor to serve alongside them. And we know that Tim and Gwen Waltz are also people of great character. Selecting Kamala was the very first decision I made when I became our nominee. And it was the best decision I made my whole career. We've not only gotten to know each other, we've become close friends. She's tough, she's experienced, and she has enormous integrity. Enormous integrity. Her story represents the best American story. And like many of our best presidents, she was also vice president. That's a joke. But she'll be a president our children can look up to. She'll be a president respected by world leaders because she already is. She'll be a president we can all be proud of. And she will be a historic president who puts her stamp on America's future. This will be the first presidential election since January 6th. On that day, we almost lost everything about who we are as a country. And that threat, this is not hyperbole, that threat is still very much alive. Donald Trump says he will refuse to accept the election result if he loses again. Think about that. He means it. Think about that. He's promising a bloodbath if he loses, in his words. And that he'll be a dictator on day one, in his own words. By the way, this sucker means it. No, I'm not joking. Think about it. Anybody else said that in the past, you'd think he was crazy. He is crazy, but you'd think it was an exaggeration, but he means it. We can't let that happen. Folks, all of us carry a special obligation. Independents, Republicans, Democrats. We saved democracy in 2020, and now we must save it again in 2024. The vote of each of us cast this year will determine whether democracy and freedom will prevail. It's that simple. It's that serious. And the power is literally in your hands. History is in your hands. Not hyperbole. It's in your hands. America's future is in your hands. Let me close with this. Nowhere else in the world could a kid with a stutter and modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, grow up to sit behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. That's because America is, and always has been, a nation of possibilities. Possibilities. We must never lose that. Never. Kamala and Tim understand that this nation must continue to be a place of possibilities, not just for the few of us, but for all of us. But join me in promising your whole heart to this effort, and where my heart will be. I promise I'll be the best volunteer Harrison Walsh has Cam ever seen. Each of us has a part in the American story. For me and my family, there's a song that means a lot to us, that captures the best of who we are as a nation. The song is called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, and I can't sing worth a damn, so I'm not going to try. I'll just quote it. The work and prayers of centuries have brought us to this day. What shall our legacy be? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart, when my days are through, America, America, I gave my best to you. I made mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. For 50 years, like many of you, I've given my heart and soul to our nation. And I've been blessed a million times in return with the support of the American people. I've either been too young to be in the Senate because I wasn't 30 yet, and too old to stay as president. But I hope you know how grateful I am to all of you. I can honestly say, and I mean this from the bottom, give you my word as a Biden, I can honestly say I'm more optimistic about the future than I was when I was elected as a 29-year-old United States Senator. I mean it. Folks, we just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing we cannot do when we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
President Joe Biden, the First Lady Jill Biden, center stage early Tuesday morning after a stemwinder of a speech to an adoring crowd. A remarkable amount of energy in that room. Every seat filled, as you can see, nobody left. There's been some social media commentary about how late this was and how late it ran and why is the president speaking so late. You got to understand, folks, this is a crowd of Democratic believers, some of whom drove 10 and 12 hours from the East Coast because of the storms. They're here for this. We are covering their event and not the other way around. Let's go to Josh Robin. He's inside the arena. And Josh, tell us about the mood. What's going on there?
I think that the mood generally is very supportive. It wasn't the most electrifying of speech from the current president. A bunch of people have left, certainly not the majority, but it is quite late, certainly late where you are, Errol. We're an hour earlier. There were some issues that the producers of this are addressing. They say that there was so much applause for other speakers that they got off track. Unclear if that's entirely true. They might have wanted to have jettisoned a few other speakers earlier to bring Joe Biden into more prime time. But, you know, that's water under the bridge now. What you have, most importantly, is Joe Biden saying that he's going to be the most enthusiastic volunteer that Kamala Harris ever had. And you have that tableau there, the passing of the torch, which is what we expected Monday night to be. We just didn't realize it was going to be Tuesday morning. Sorry, I just looked over there to see what they were cheering about. Just another round of applause for Joe Biden. I thought that the speech, you know, look, he had a lot of energy. It didn't really electrify the crowd. Him coming in electrified the crowd. The best line to me was he was too young to be a U.S. senator because he was elected at 29, and now he's too old to be a president. So kind of poking fun at himself. But that's what people wanted to see, the Democrats wanted to see, and they got it right there, what you're looking at the screen.
All right, let's go to Taylor Poplar. Some final thoughts as we close out our coverage of this convention night.
You know, Errol, I thought it was interesting that Biden said, I've got 5 months left in my presidency, I've got a lot to do, and I intend to get it done. but he also spoke for almost an hour in a speech that sounded like it was his farewell address. And, you know, he's going to remain in office through the rest of this year, but I think he knew this was probably the largest audience he would speak to for the remainder of his presidency. You know, we'll likely hear from him toward the end of the year when he's getting ready to sign off officially. But as Josh said, this really was the passing of the torch, and Biden reiterated what he said in that Oval Office address a couple of weeks ago, where he says, I love the job, but I love my country more. And that's why he ultimately felt comfortable stepping away at 81 years old and not trudging ahead with a re-election bid that most of his party was really, really uncomfortable with because of concerns about his age. Now, as we talked about before he spoke, Biden's going to head right back to his plane right now and is going to fly overnight to California and spend the rest of the week on vacation. So all the symbolism that you need is right there, that he has now passed the torch. This is now Kamala Harris's party, and the rest of this convention will be focused squarely on her.
To a remarkable degree, every bit of this convention was designed around Joe Biden, the expectation that he'd be the nominee. And of course, that all changed in the last few weeks. Let's go to Milwaukee. Jason Fechner, your closing thoughts here.
Errol, while obviously no longer the nominee, this played very much like an acceptance speech. Obviously, President Joe Biden accepting the love and adoration from that Democratic crowd out there, even from those, of course, who advocated for him to no longer be the Democratic nominee. An acceptance speech where he publicly to the nation accepted and also advocated for Kamala Harris not just being the Democratic presidential nominee going forward, but the President of the United States. You know, powerful speeches over the last 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever it has been now for the Democrats as they kick off a big week there in Chicago going forward.
All right, thanks very much, Jason. And Cassie Semyon, who's been outside for much of this, I know you got to hear the speech. Your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think this was really a moment for Joe Biden to take a victory lap of sorts, and we'll likely see this over the next several months. We saw that a little bit last week with the event he did with the vice president. It was an official event, but it had the feeling of a campaign rally. It was a lot of thank you, Joe, and a lot of recognition of what they've been able to accomplish as an administration so far. He says he still has a lot of work he wants to try and get done, but remember, this is an election year, and Congress is basically done legislating except for those pesky bills that fund the government that they like to kick off until the end of the year. They're going to be on the campaign trail a lot over the next several months. So anything that he wants to do moving forward that requires congressional action will likely be slow moving. Maybe we'll see more executive action on his part over the next several weeks and months. But ultimately, this was a thank you love letter from the Democrats of this country to Joe Biden. That's what we saw tonight, and he was obviously very emotional about it, Errol.
All right, thanks very much. Alex Cohen, what do you think?
Look, it was a very long night for everyone, but, you know, here on the West Coast, it's not even 9:30. My kids are just getting to bed. And also, as we've all talked about before, you know, those of us who can't get enough of this politics, we watch it all play out on live TV. But this is not the world we live in. A lot of people will really experience tonight in clips that get circulated over the next 24 hours. I also think, you know, unlike the RNC, which was all the party of Donald Trump, the Democrats are really trying to create a big tent that makes things go kind of long.
Happens, yeah. Let's go to Tim.
I think we get caught up in the moment and everyone's tired and whatnot, but I do think the clips are what's going to live on for this, and we're probably going to see a lot of tonight in perhaps Kamala Harris ads in the future. I thought a lot of this was a campaign speech. I thought that last 3 to 4 minutes was the most powerful. You know, when he gets to those soft tones and sort of is speaking from the heart, I thought we were going to see a lot more of that. But overall tonight, while we thought Joe Biden was going to be the main headline, I actually thought the energy of the room and Democrats was a big part, and that was the headline of the night.
Absolutely. Less than a minute. Susan, tell us what you saw.
So I thought that they projected a lot of unity in Chicago tonight, but if you scratch a little bit under the surface, you could see that there are immense divisions, especially over Israel and Gaza. Pro-Palestinian delegates said that they would disrupt the proceedings depending on how things go. You saw a little of that earlier this evening, and I'm betting you see a little more as the week progresses.
All right. Thank you to everybody on the panel. Josh Robin, Taylor Popolars, Cassie Semyon, Kevin Fry, Jason Fechner, Tim Boyum, Alex Cohen, and Susan Arbetter. Thank you at home for watching. I'm Errol Lewis. More news now on Spectrum.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories